Good morning. My name's Stephanie Hardy. I'm 29 years old. I have a BA in English Literature and Fine Arts from Seattle University, and I have a BFA in Visual Communications from O'More College of Design here in Franklin. I moved to New York City 2 years ago, partly for a job and partly for a guy I fell in love with. I met Eric through a mutual friend on a job scouting trip in New York. We dated long distance for quite a while before I decided to permanently relocate to New York City. As soon as I moved there, I realized he had a short fuse. His fury was fast and impenetrable. Oftentimes, I had no idea what sparked such hateful outbursts. In the beginning, the arguments would be once every few months, but as time went on, they became more frequent. I now know that I ignored some serious red flags right from the beginning. When the economy crashed in 2008, it seemed as if many aspects of my life began to quickly follow in a downward spiral. Being unemployed in the most expensive city in America was pretty much the last thing I ever expected or planned on. Almost immediately, my life began to revolve around my boyfriend. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale relationship. It was every girl's dream, or so it seemed. I did not have many friends of my own in New York. Eric would tell me matter of fact that I didn't need any because I had him. The sense of defeat I felt when I heard him say this weighed heavily upon my heart. After a year, I thought things would be better, but the sudden death of Eric's brother in April 2009 had only added new and insurmountable stress to our lives. He was full of anger all the time. He had a hairpin trigger, as he liked to call it. Over the next 6 months, he destroyed me, both emotionally and verbally. He erupted nearly every single day and would drill into me that my life with him would involve walking on eggshells for a long time to come. Eric was a master at breaking me down and leaving me in despair. He really had me convinced that there was something wrong with me and that I was the problem and that I was the one that needed the help. Over time, I started cutting myself to cope. However, that quickly evolved into a constant contemplation of suicide. My desire to live was draining, and it was draining fast. In July of 2009, an argument unfolded that ended in physical abuse. My arms were covered in bruises from him grabbing me and throwing me out of his way. The next day, I packed my bags and I got on a plane home to Nashville. My family saw the bruises and begged me to make the decision to stay home for good. I lasted about a week before he started calling me over and over, begging me to come back. And I went back. I felt that I had to know that I gave this my very best shot. I walked right back into a daily routine of anger, hate, and blame. I became more and more afraid of Eric's anger and the punishments that I would endure. He threatened me verbally, emotionally, and physically. I was afraid to go anywhere, and I seldom left our apartment. I spent nearly every day crying. I kept thinking that I needed to change, or that I had to try harder. Nothing I did was ever good enough. One day, he pushed me down the stairs to get me out of his way. He looked at me, his eyes bulging and bloodshot, his face red with anger, and he screamed at me through gritted teeth that I had lost all speaking privileges with him, and he told me seethingly that I was worth nothing. I picked myself up off those stairs, and I slowly began packing for Nashville. The next morning, he left me without saying goodbye. He slammed the door in my face. At that very moment, I knew things would never change, and that he would not change. My family welcomed me with open arms and took care of me, but I was hurting in a way that they really didn't understand. I needed to grasp and cope with what had happened to me over the last few years. My therapist told me about the YWCA Tuesday night support group that meets in the community as an alternate resource for help. I decided to try it, thinking that I really needed all the help that I could get. After the first night at group, I realized I wasn't alone, and there were other people who understood exactly what had been happening to me. Through my group, I've learned about the dynamics of domestic violence. I never thought I was being abused until I learned there were classic patterns and behaviors to look for. My life had been on a repeated cycle. I was seduced by him and drawn back into it over and over again. While my confidence and self-worth diminished, his power only grew. After being in a controlling relationship for years, I did not expect anyone to really believe that I had been sharing my life with an abuser. I felt incredibly alone and certainly misunderstood. The YWCA support group helped me know that the abuse I experienced destroys your self-worth and perhaps even your will to live. Abuse does happen, and it happens to all kinds of people. Every time I go to group, I'm surprised by the many different types of women who are there. Every woman has their own story, but somehow their stories are part of my own as well. These women are some of the strongest people I have ever met, and they have each inspired me to change. 2 months into our separation, I knew that going back to Eric would not be an option any longer. Stepping into this new light, I know I will never accept abuse in my life again. I am determined to change and end the patterns that led me to be stuck in a brainwashing, controlling relationship. I have reached the point of understanding that I was a victim of domestic violence, but I have then had to figure out what allowed me to accept that kind of treatment in the first place. As I learn and seek the appropriate guidance I need through this healing process, I know that I will allow no one to ever take away my will to live again, such as the way that Eric did. I spent 2 years wanting to end my life. Day after day, I'd run to the edge of our rooftop and look out over our 7th floor balcony, contemplating whether or not I'd survive the jump. 2 years were spent blaming myself for never being good enough, and I believed that I was a regular problem for the person that I loved so dearly. October 24th, 2009 was the day I packed my bags and left New York. Through utter fear and uncertainty, I felt a sudden glimmer of hope. I thought that there was a chance that life could be better than this. Today I can look back and know with absolute certainty that I would not have survived another year in this relationship. Whether it be an accident or suicide, staying in New York with Eric meant that my life would end. It's only been 5 months since I left my relationship. I look around me now and I realize that I am alive. I've been given an opportunity to start fresh and redefine my life. I am no longer drowning in the feelings of not being enough for someone. I see now that I am enough. I shut the door on the brainwashing, the abuse, the neglect, the self-destruction, but I opened the door to life. Thank you, YWCA, for helping me to gather the strength to shut the doors that needed to be closed and open the ones that are full of life.